everyone. So I'm a digital sociologist, and I have been working as a digital sociologist for just over 10 years now. I started my career in journalism, actually, and it was sort of at that time when Web 2.0 was sort of exploding. I'm really kind of showcasing my age here. And I was really fascinated by the kind of response that journalists were getting to their stories and how we could start using data to better understand who was actually reading our stories. I was really through that route that I've discovered digital sociology, and I landed up doing my master's in digital sociology at Goldsmiths. And that is where I learned about digital research methods, and I got this completely new perspective on how we could actually use the internet as a tool for research. And I've been weaving that into the work that I've been doing ever since. And I've done lots of work now as a digital strategist and also as a user researcher, but predominantly using the specialism of digital sociology as a vehicle in order to drive innovation in that space.
What are the kind of gaps then in the industry of using data in research currently? What's kind of missing at the moment that we've kind of talked about previously?
Yeah, so this is it's a great question, because I think a lot of people feel that how do we continue to innovate in the research space, but really struggle with how to do that. And one of the challenges that we have around is because we haven't really been very good at innovating on what a multidisciplinary team looks like when it comes to data and data practice. So we've become very good at what does a multidisciplinary team look like in service design, as an example. But within data practice, data has really emerged from the disciplines of science, math, statistics. And what we see is that there's not a lot of the humanities that kind of get brought in there. And then if we look at the humanities, we see that that work has continued to progress, but very much in the space of sociology and anthropology, and continuing to do some of that deep ethnographic research. And we see that user research has actually kind of positioned itself along the spectrum much more around the humanities space. So around that kind of interview, around ethnography. What happens now, though, is how do we bridge the gap, right? So we know that there's all of this work happening in data teams. We know that there are new innovative ways to be able to use data in order to create different knowledge and to create knowledge differently. But we haven't found a good way to bridge that together. And I think that is probably why some of those major gaps are occurring.
What are the differences between these digital research methodologies and then the qualitative research, which you kind of mentioned in there, that most user research have now?
So a lot of our disciplines within the humanities tend to rely on things like ethnography, which kind of the central tenet of ethnography is the power of the interview. Now, this is a wonderful methodology, as it allows us to capture lots of lived experience. There's lots of rich data that comes from talking to people and understanding the lived experience that they have. And then sometimes what we would do, sociologists are very good at creating big population surveys and being able to kind of capture some of that stuff at scale. What we haven't done a lot of innovation around is how do we actually use the internet as a tool for research? How does all of the data that's being produced through people engaging with new tools and methods, new tools and platforms, devices, how do we use the data that's kind of coming out of all of those streams and bring that into our user research? So digital research methods does that. We start to see the internet as another tool to conduct research. And we start to be able to kind of draw on our history of traditional research methods, the interview, ethnography, diary studies, and we add a layer on top of that. And we start to say, how could I conduct an ethnography online, right? How do I do that online? How do I think about the survey and capture voices that are coming from different social media channels? How do I understand politics of association by looking at which websites are connecting to who, or which people are linking to different people, or connected or following different people? So that is essentially the kind of the big difference between the two.
And why do you think then that it's we've got to a place where this is lacking? What's kind of, and are there things that have influenced this at all?
Yeah, I think there are. So, so I think we are always very good in the digital space at at driving innovation around actual product and service design, but we are not very good at innovating around policies and processes. And those tend to take a lot more time to drive innovation through that. And I would say that jobs, skills, capability, professions all kind of fit into that space of policy and process.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're not good enough at doing that. I think probably because changing the way we do things is really hard to do. It requires lots of moving parts. It requires the cooperation and the collaboration of lots of many people. And so that's probably where the kind of like issue is around that.
Yeah.
However, I also think that there's a huge issue around access. So when I did my master's at Goldsmiths, I was one of the first people, kind of first cohorts to do that course. But Goldsmiths no longer offers that course. And actually, if you were now looking for a digital sociology MSc or a digital sociology MA, they're actually quite difficult to come by. You have to kind of really seek them out. And I think Edinburgh University is doing one. You also have to try to identify, if you can't find that particular course, you can find perhaps another degree that offers digital research methods as a course. And again, it requires that kind of prior knowledge to be able to really seek that out. So access to these new methods and the ways of doing things differently is also holding us back.
I guess apart from, because we are lacking in university courses which don't have those modules, is there any other way you can think of that we actually upskill the current workforce in order to kind of like tackle these issues?
Yeah, so I think making some of these skills available, a quick way to do that is we could do a lot more online training. We could take an element of the course and we could kind of develop that as the training piece. So I don't think you need to do a full degree in digital sociology or digital anthropology to be able to innovate on your research methods. But what you do need is you need somebody or a group of people to come in to be able to say, actually, this is like the digital research methods toolkit, right, that you need. Amsterdam does a really good job. Amsterdam University does a really good job of training people. So they have both a summer school as well as a winter school that people can go on. Warwick University also has a couple of courses and has some really interesting papers around this. There are starting to be some really good books out there that are being published around digital research methods, and Professor Richard Rogers, who is based at Amsterdam University, is really driving that. So there are opportunities like that we could kind of really capitalize on, improving the access that you need and readily available access through knowledge of books, online platforms, etc. I think the other thing that we could start to do, though, is we can start to make this a desired skill set, right? And one of the ways that we can do that in government, particularly in the space that I work, is by adding digital sociology or digital anthropology to the DDAT framework. So we need to really kind of introduce this as an aspirational career, as a progression to user research, or as a complementary set of research methods that user researchers can do by formalizing it within the official frameworks that we all work in.
And I guess kind of just wrapping up there, like, theoretically, should this kind of change happen, what would be the impact of it, and what's it kind of lead to ideally?
So I would love this to happen because one of the things that it would do is would make us all as a research community start to think about data more holistically, and it would also allow those data teams to become much more diverse in nature. It would allow us to start to be able to produce better research, better outcomes. We know that in government, we're not just really ever designing for a very small audience group. Very often our audience groups are huge groups of people. And there are lots of ways to learn about what they need outside of just doing interviews, right? I think the other thing that sometimes user research can be criticized for is that because we focus a lot of the work on interviews, how do we know that what we have captured is not just sort of a group of individual preferences, right? And actually what we've captured is needs at scale, because that's what we're always trying to do, is we're always trying to solve needs at scale. So I think those are some of the things that we can also improve. I think capturing lots of different data points and identifying lots of different sources of data also makes it much easier for us as researchers to be able to spot bias in our research, to be able to identify potential unintended consequences that may, come to the fore a bit later. And then I also think, just lastly, it will actually elevate user research as a discipline. It will start to see that the work that we can do is not just solely within product and service design, but actually in informing data-driven services, also informing the way that these data-driven services are architected, informing the way that data should be stored. And so we could start to then actually influence some of those conversations that are happening around the data governance space, and how data is really kind of powering some of those products and services.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your insight today. It's really been a pleasure to have you, and I'm hoping it's just a learning curve for me, but hopefully for everyone else. And off the back of this, I guess if anyone does have any questions, would you be happy for them just to reach out to you over LinkedIn?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, please do. The more digital sociologists we have in the world, the better, because it would be great. It would be great for more people to know and understand this profession, and for us to be able to have far greater researchers in the industry who are kind of hybrid, who can work across these online and offline spaces.
I couldn't agree with you more. In that case, I will point them in your direction.
Thank you very much. It's been great to be here. Awesome. Take care.